be a moderator. So what we have is about 45 minutes.
Okay. So what we were just saying is that can this light be a little bit dimmed so that we can see
Yes,
we are speaking
the
to?
lights that are falling in our eyes.
Yes, we are doing it. There's a fade.
So I just want to begin by thanking JNU Teachers Association for organizing this excellent event. It was quite impossible to do something like this even 2 years back. And so this is absolutely wonderful. And particularly because I'm going to be in conversation with an extraordinary person who is tall not only in the world of cinema, but also as a public intellectual. And I think Kaushik has talked about that a lot, that Aparna Sen's stature doesn't just come from film-related achievements and accomplishments, but her public interventions, both as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a journalist, and as editor of Shananda magazine, a popular magazine that Kaushik talked about, which along with beauty, health, cookery, covered a whole range of contemporary issues. And the editorial that Aparna Sen wrote, which actually many of us feel which should be collated and published as a book, addressed a lot of the issues that concern her, particularly in the aftermath of the demolition of the Baire Masjid. There's a lot of concern that Aparna Sen's editorials expressed about the religious polarization in the society, the consequences of what would happen if that were allowed to happen. Not to mention the kind of, the politics that always form the backdrop of a film. So even when the films are about intimate relationships, there's always a larger world of socio-political events that play out in the background. So with that, Aparna Di, if I can, would you like to? Okay, so one of the suggestions that she has, and because she's the director, we should listen to what she's saying, is that all the people who are sitting at the back, could you just come in front, because it'll be good to see who we are speaking to. Yeah, I think this one needs to be, something needs to be done about that. Yes, I think this light is enough, and then we'll be able to see people who are.
So happy coming in front, please.
So I think gradually people are coming in front. Yeah. Because I'll start the discussion with a few questions and then I'll open it out to others so that you can also have your say and ask questions, give your responses to the film. Aparna, may I begin by asking you, since this is the film that we've just seen, that what were the origins of this film? When did you decide to make this? Because there's a novel by Tagore, there is a film by Satyajit Ray, and how and why did you decide to make this film?
Okay, so actually it was the murder of Gauri Lankesh that really precipitated this. I mean, the day I heard this, that night I found it impossible to sleep. Must have drifted off in the wee hours, and I had a dream. I had a dream that I was making a contemporary version of Rabindranath Tagore's Home and the World, and it was a first-time filmmaker who was also a huge fan of Satyajit Ray's, who was making this film. Now, of course, I am a fan of Satyajit Ray's, but I'm not a first-time filmmaker. But then again, I am a first-time filmmaker because every time I make a film, it seems like I'm making it for the first time. So that's how it really started, and you will have noticed the similarities to Gauri Lankesh, particularly at the end.
Just a question that how did you respond to Satyajit Ray's Ghare Baire, and how did you make yours different?
Well, Satyajit Ray's Ghare Baire was made in 1984, and it was made really, it was quite, it followed the original, quite faithfully followed the original, that's Tagore's novel. Tagore's novel was set, I think, sometime in 1916, something like that. I hope I'm not wrong. But it was a different time, and today it's different. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do differently in my film from Tagore's novel, let's leave Satyajit's Ghare Baire out of it, because that was also another rendering of Tagore's novel. Mine was a second rendering. So what I felt was that Tagore had said in his novel that Shodip and Nikhilesh were very good friends, which is why Shodip could come and stay in Nikhilesh's house. If you're not a very good friend, you can't. But nowhere in the novel did he think it important to actually show the origins of that friendship. Now, a film and a novel are different. One is literature, the other is cinema. So in a film, you can't just have reportage. I felt that I have to show this friendship. So this is what I wanted to film in JNU, and I wasn't allowed. I wrote several letters, I still have those copies. Finally, I filmed it in modern school in Barakhamba Road, which was very similar. You know, the architecture is very similar. Also, I just wanted to say something. That Vimola was different. In Tagore's time, at that time there was still the Andur Mahal or the Zinana, where women were in the interior part of the household. But today you can't have that. So, which is why I made Vimola different. I made her Brinda, and I'll get into that later.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when it was announced that Satyajit was going to be Ghare Baire, we all assumed that you would be Vimola, and was dreadfully disappointed when you weren't. I'm sure there are many people here who would kind of recognize that.
I was disappointed too, because he told me that I was going to play Vimola, and then he found Shatilekha, so that was that. But Shatilekha could sing, she could play the piano, she was a stage actress, so yeah, I think he had seen her in an adaptation of the Caucasian Chalk Circle, and that's how he picked on her.
Okay. One of the interesting things about, I mean, this comparison is not really correct, but I'm still making it that in Satyajit's Ghare Baire, Shandip is pretty much a villain. And even in your film, from what we know about you, your politics is closer to that of Nikhilesh than of Shandip. But at the same time, Shandip says a number of things that you would believe in. So tell us a little bit about how you conceived Shandip.
Okay, so I think first of all that even if I don't believe in the politics of for convenience, let's call him anti-hero, just for convenience. Even if I don't believe in the politics of my adversary, say, there is no reason to intellectually underestimate him. And I believe that there are many people in ideologies that I don't contribute to, I don't believe in, who are intellectual giants, in fact, some of them. But it is what they have chosen to do with their intellect and how to apply it, which is, for me, objectionable. So, but I don't see any reason, unless your adversary is strong and somebody you can look up to and respect, even if you don't agree with him or her, how can you pit him as an adversary to the hero?
So to that end, what did you make him do?
Okay.
I have my favorite sequences, but
okay, I'll
hear
tell
yours. Yeah.
One of the things that you've just freshly seen the film. So one of the things what's wrong with this one?
You can take.
But it's the same. Well, you'll have a bad mind.
No problem.
Anyway, do you remember the scene that we had, the terrace scene where there was a restaurant where they're, just after Shandip has come, Nikhilesh has taken him out to have lunch, and they're sitting outdoors in the sun and they're talking, and that's when, at one point Shandip says that it is, if you love the people of your country, you have to love them despite all their faults, despite their vulnerabilities, despite their superstitions even. And if you don't love them that much, how can you serve them? Now this is directly, well, it's not directly, I mean it's not the exact words, but this is what is said in Rabindranath's other novel, Gora. which I thought would be a wonderful novel actually to film. I haven't got around to doing that because it's very difficult. But I did borrow the kind of thought processes that Gora would go through, and put them into Shondeep's mouth, so to speak. I also felt that Shondeep was a very complex person. I made him a very complex person. He was an atheist. He had joined the Maoist movement, or Naxalite movement, whatever you like to call it. And he was a very active, sort of in party politics while in college. But afterwards, then he also still remains in politics, but he becomes a different kind. I mean, he's no longer a leftist politician, So he goes to the other extreme, actually.
My last question about Ghare and then I'll ask everybody else to speak. How do you imagine Bimola?
Well, this is what I was saying, that because you don't have the Zanana anymore, the Andar Mahal, so Bimola had to be somebody who would have the same vulnerabilities as a woman from the Zanana, which Bimola was. Bimola hadn't met anyone, she was shy, she was reticent in the beginning. So here I made her a girl from a different class. She was actually a Dalit, but apart from being a Dalit, I'm not only talking about caste politics. Here, in terms of class, in the sense of economic divisions of class, she was very poor and she got adopted by a family who were very affluent. So when she comes into that family, she is then put into a boarding school for girls. And I've had a daughter who went to a boarding school for girls. I know what boarding schools for girls are, how strictly disciplinarian they were. So I don't imagine that she had any opportunity of really getting to know the outside world. Then when she comes back here, then she's adopted by the family and she's sent away to, as I said, a boarding school, and then later she goes to Lady Shri Ram. In Lady Shri Ram, I'm sure there are many women who are pretty sort of open-minded and independent and forward-thinking and so on. But in the case of this particular girl, she already had this vulnerability of feeling insecure and vulnerable, socially vulnerable, because she came here when she was about 8 or 9 years old. So she would remember what happened with her and her parents and what kind of life they had earlier on. So, all that would add to her vulnerability, and therefore I don't imagine that she was very socially sort of gregarious. Not at all. I don't think so. Which is why, and she's very young, she's much younger than Nikhilesh and Sandeep and all those people. So when she meets Sandeep, she is carried away by his flamboyance and so on. I mean, otherwise, it seems to me that Bimola or Brinda would not be naive enough to trust this person so much. She would have to be sort of innocent and unexposed to a large extent.
You have a smile on your face. You want to say something?
I was just initiating the things that...
All right. Maybe we can start a larger discussion here, and then of course any hands up, any questions, suggestions? If I'm missing out on something,
I don't think he was doing it only for the marginalized. I think he was doing it as much for himself as a doctor.
These two kind of have the same kind of handwriting, not that I want to be a detective at this point. Okay, now there is another note here. Brinda's character has been depicted as tribal Dalit. I understand tribal, I understand Dalit. I would like to know what is tribal Dalit. And it says, love the movie with a heart.
Thank you. No, I think at times you see there are people who sometimes will confuse tribal and Dalit. And often you don't catch them saying tribal Dalit at the same time. There are people who are saying tribal, there are people who are saying Dalit. You'll find that this is pretty commonplace, at least I've heard it spoken that way. Not that it's the same person who's saying it, it's probably somebody else.
Okay, now here is a question after my heart, and therefore I will.
Yes, all right.
Why does infidelity, spelled wrong, always? Sorry, I have to be a little bit of a professor here. Why does infidelity always need a crutch or justification?
A crutch or justification. Did in Brinda's case infidelity have a crutch or justification? I
don't know.
I'm not. I don't really understand this question too well.
I think I had a.
Turn the page around.
Oh, by mentioning information you came close to not doing so.
Infatuation.
Oh, by mentioning infatuation you came close to not doing so.
Not doing what? Not justifying. Yeah. Yeah, I think there was a very strong attraction, but in a marriage, there will be strong attractions. I mean, both parties will be attracted to other people as long as they don't act upon it. Now, you see, the idea of marriage and the idea of fidelity within a marriage differs from person to person, I think. To me, if you want to go into a marriage with the understanding that you're going to remain faithful to each other, then you have a responsibility to do that. But if it's an open marriage, then it's okay. It could be an open marriage.
That's a very unlike Aparna Sen kind of answer.
No, why do you feel that Aparna Sen believes in infidelity?
Because we don't think infidelity is necessarily a bad thing.
No, it may not be a bad thing. I mean, look, there are so many things that are not bad. You don't have to necessarily contribute to that. I mean, look, I do believe in fidelity. I believe in fidelity to friends, for instance. Why?
No, we are talking about marriage here, right?
No, we're talking about marriage. So if
Porama would not say forgive me.
Porama was another woman.
Okay.
She was another character with another completely different set of ideas. But one has to remember, for those of you who have not seen Porama, I have to say Porama was a housewife who had an affair and an extramarital affair, and then later on, of course, she attempts suicide, and then she
faces the consequences.
Once the family gets to know, and right at the end, when the she says at the end that I do not feel any guilt. So that is what Sohini is referring to. But I have to remind Sohini that in the beginning, Porama, before she committed suicide and so on, she committed suicide because she was feeling so guilty and so ostracized. She says to her husband, if I have wronged you, if I have committed a sin, ami dosh korechi, maine dosh kiya hai, so saza do mujhe, she says. So if she's saying saza do mujhe, then in what way is she not?
No, she doesn't say that.
She does. Excuse me. She says, ami dosh korechi, shasti dao.
She says, don't be silent, don't just go away. If I have done something wrong, punish me.
Yes, so it's the same thing. Punish me if I've done something wrong, but don't ostracize me, is basically what she says. But she moves on from there. So her moving on and Brinda's moving on may be different.
She doesn't have any space now to move on because she's moved on to murder.
Well, who knows? I mean, maybe this was the moving on.
Right. So,
would Porama have committed murder? I don't think. No.
Yeah, I have a question, right, on this issue. Good, and that is one part of the film that I kind of said if it is being redone and adapted for contemporary times. Could we have had some other kind of ending than Shomdip turning out to be not only just a hypocrite, but also turning her down and she feeling betrayed and then killing him?
But she doesn't kill him because she's feeling betrayed.
No, I mean because he's a hypocrite. I mean, he turns
No,
out to
she
be-
kills him because he lies about her husband. He lies about her husband and he tries to use her husband's death for his, to further his rise in power. That's why she kills him, I think. He tells an outright lie about Nikhilesh being involved with Maoists.
Yeah, no, he does. But without
Incidentally,
vilifying,
this
without vilifying, could we have had a more-
vilifying Sandeep.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I have not really vilified Sandeep if you read the novel. If you read the novel, Sandeep is an out-and-out villain. But Sandeep, in fact, I've tried because I don't like out-and-out villains and I don't like black and white characters, which is why I have used many shades of grey. Like Sandeep at the end when he says he was my friend, my only real friend. You know, I intended for him, and I think the actor also acted that way, for him to really mean it. And Sandeep, when he says that I didn't intend for them to kill him, I think he's telling the truth there. So he's also he is a manipulative, ruthless kind of individual. I mean, you have all kinds of people. You can't have the story wouldn't be it wouldn't be the same story if Sandeep wasn't at least partially black. It would be a different story.
Okay, this I will ask you to read
Why? For what reason?
because of the competitiveness of this concept.
That's a strange task to be burdened with. This is an irony. This film being dedicated to Gauri Lankesh portrays the woman in the weakest life and position. Also, when Nikhilesh confesses that he knew so this is Gauri Lankesh as a woman and apparently we have
Wait, then we can work with the Purana mind.
Nikhilesh confesses to Brinda that he knew beforehand he wanted Sandeep to discover his dark side. He was being unjust to Brinda. That I don't get, that bit. Whereas- So the first part is that why is a film that is dedicated to Gauri Lankesh portraying the woman as such a weak person?
Because the woman is not Gauri Lankesh. It's Nikhilesh who's Gauri Lankesh. I mean, I don't necessarily have to stick to the same gender.
Also, Nikhilesh confesses to Brinda that he knew beforehand. So, whoever has asked this question, can you speak up and put it? Yeah. Yeah.
Just come a little
Or
bit.
you just come a little bit to the front. And ask the question.
Freedom of speech, there is a price that has to be paid. So I would want freedom of speech at any price. That's my answer.
Okay, now here is a question about Amul, the young man.
Yes.
You were saying that it is important not to infantilize our political rivals and not treat them as naive, but I thought that the character of Amul was a bit infantilized. In my own personal experiences with people of that age with similar inclinations, they aren't that surprised when the repercussions of their ideology are stated to them. I was a bit put off by the scene where Amullo is shell-shocked when the matter of Junaid being sent to Pakistan is brought up. Like he would have known about it anyway. When Junaid says that, if your ideology basically succeeds, that he will have to go off to Pakistan, and he seems really surprised by it. And whoever has written this, the one who's put off, says that that wouldn't be the case because that person would know that anyway, would be shell-shocked.
Well, perhaps you're right. I don't know. It seems to me at that point of time that perhaps Amullo hadn't given that side much thought. That's all. But you could be right, yes.
Okay, in the restaurant, Shondeep and Nikhil are talking about nationalisms, and Nikhil says different people have different nationalism. What kind of different nationalisms is Nikhil talking about?
Different ideas of nationalism.
Yeah, I mean.
So, according to some people, the government in power defines nationalism. And according to others, to many others, perhaps the opposition is what defines, their ideology defines nationalism. And according to some others, like perhaps Nikhil, nationalism is actually just loving your country. Just loving your country, which means that you would be able to critique it also. But genuinely loving your country is nationalism. And to Rabindranath, of course, to go, nationalism was not a good thing.
So there's one question over here that says, when Bimala kills Shonde, does it not put an end to the conversation for which Nikhilesh fought? And does this not give the party supporting Shonde a chance to portray Nikhilesh's movement in the wrong light? Why did you choose this specific ending?
I chose this specific ending from Brinda's point of view, actually. I chose it from Brinda's point of view, not any other. And I felt that, it is true that Nikhilesh, just repeat that part of the question again. That's quite interesting.
When Nikhilesh kills Shonde, does it not put an end to the conversation? Sorry, when Bimala kills Shonde, does it not put an end to the conversation for which Nikhilesh fought?
Yes, Nikhilesh, I think, wanted a secularism, free speech, freedom of expression, all of that. Here, Nikhilesh, in the same situation, would never have killed Shonde. That is true. But Bimala or Brinda is not Nikhilesh. I have to keep explaining that each character takes an action according to his or her mental condition at a particular point of time. So Nikhilesh was a much more evolved individual than Brinda is. Brinda is not really that evolved. Brinda is actually doing it as a kind of, it's more an emotional reaction than anything else. It's not a well thought out
political strategy.
It's not a political strategy at all.
Okay, now I'm going to hand over.
It's related, so let me ask this question, which is also rather interesting. It says, in the name of flipping hierarchy, are we really losing a sense of nuance? You just mentioned Shondeep has to be partially black, grey. Does a right-wing figure also need to be a treacherous friend, adulterer, abuser, and immoral also? Is this what his ideology motivates him to do? Because he's right-wing, he's a treacherous? Or is it just the personality of an opportunist person?
No, it's his personality. Even Nikhilesh tells Brinda right in the beginning that he was a great womanizer. And he himself says so. I think when he takes her out to that housecast place, he says so. Yes, I have that reputation, he says. So it's it's not a secret that he was a womanizer, and he found Bimala attractive, and I don't think he had any moral compunctions on that score. That's the kind of individual he is. So I don't think that's got anything at all to do with his ideology.
Yeah, so the question got nothing to do with his ideology. Yeah, okay, yeah.
I don't think so.
Obviously not.
No.
Yes. No, I just think that this might be a good thing to kind of end with, because it also is asking you a question about the politics of today, or if I have read it correctly. It says, thank you, the movie was the best. My question is that what Ghare Baire tells us about the age of aggressive nationalism.
Yes, Rabindranath's Ghare Baire also spoke about aggressive nationalism in the pre-independence period. Over there, at that time, the Shondeeps of the world, of India, they were trying to free India by boycotting foreign goods. Now, a lot of this material, the cloth, cotton, and all the cloth, was coming from Manchester mills, which was in Great Britain. Now, but that material was much better quality and much cheaper than the India-made stuff. And that Tagore says quite clearly in his novel that even the soaps that Nikhilesh tried to make, those soaps could not be used, not even for washing clothes. So he says that quite clearly, that India-made goods at that time were not any good. So fine, if you have the money, if you have the wherewithal, then by all means try using these. But if you are, and at that time in Nikhilesh's that zamindari, there were a lot of subjects who were poor, and most of them were Muslims. And he felt that it was unethical for all the Manchester mills and all this imported cloth to be removed from the market so that they wouldn't be able to lay their hands on it. They would perforce have to use the Indian made stuff, which was not only more expensive but of much worse quality. So that was Nikhilesh's attitude. So I think that, what was the question again?
Was it my question?
Aggressive nationalism.
Aggressive nationalism. So that was the aggressive nationalism of Tagore's time. And in our time, we also see aggressive nationalism. But what happens with nationalism, my country right or wrong, is not my government in power right or wrong. My country, yes. But my country should not be confused with my government in power. So aggressive nationalism sometimes tends to take that route, not always, sometimes tends to take that route. And sometimes will not see anything wrong with the country, will not be able to critique the country, which is also very important.
There's one interesting question here, clearly from somebody who is studying cinema perhaps. Since this film is based on a novel and the characters are somewhat defined, during the writing process, how did you choose to stick to the original or modulate the characters? How do you conceive complex characters like this as a screenwriter? What will be your advice to young screenwriters attempting to do the same?
See, in the novel, it was, the Nikhilesh's voice, Bimalal's voice, Sandeep's voice, that's how the novel went. I didn't do that because it's difficult to do that in a film. And I didn't think that it was entirely necessary in a film to follow that particular device. But when creating characters, I think it is important to try to inhabit that particular character, even if his or her ideology is not similar to yours. I think it's very important to try and inhabit that character, to try and understand where he or she is coming from. Which is why with Sandeep's character I found the most interesting actually, because he's actually the most complex of all these people. See, he was an atheist. He became an Naxalite at one point. He didn't believe in the Constitution. Now, all of these things, and then he goes to one extreme, he joins the extremists movement. And then he goes to the other extreme. I think people who can go to one extreme can very easily go to the opposite end too. This is how I was creating the graph of the character. But people also tend to come back to their roots. They have a tendency to come back to their roots. If he was brought up in a kind of way he was brought up, where his Nana, he says to Brinda at one point that you should come home to my country place where we have this, that Diwali with Ravan being set on fire, etc., etc. He had that kind of mahol over there. We've seen his house when they all go there. So it is very easy. You saw the way his grandfather punished that man. Instant justice. So these are the things that one tends to come back to. One tends to come back to one's roots. This is what I felt when I was creating Sandeep's character. Though Sandeep has all these great intellectual qualities, he also has the intellectual prowess to justify what he's doing.
And Nikhilesh actually says at some point that are you becoming like your...
Yes.
I think we are, running out of time, coming towards an end. And there's one question from you. Yeah.
Because it's not to do with the film, but about the future, and it's a good one. Indeed, I would recommend everyone to see The Rapist when it comes out. It's an absolutely incredible film. I mean, it's amazing, you know. So the question is, could you please tell us more about The Rapist and your position on sexual violence?
I can't. There'd be spoilers. How can I tell you about The Rapist? It wouldn't be fair to the producers, you know, when they're just planning to release it. Hold on till April.
Tell us a little bit about where it started, when we were...
You know, it started with the question in my mind, is that no human being is born a rapist. And therefore, when and how and why does he turn into one? That was the starting point of the film, a question that had been bothering me for a long time. And I was trying to find answers, not that I found them, but the exploration was the film.
And when can we expect to see the film?
Well, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, you know, we're having, it's with the censor board. Now, once they give us the certificate, we can actually have it. I think the producers are planning on showing it, releasing it sometime in April. Fingers crossed.
Okay. So, I think, yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you very
so
much.
this was a fantastic discussion. Thanks for all the questions. It's amazing to have so much interaction with the audience.
We haven't read it now.
And so, thank you.